Hi everyone, if you've made it with us this far, you're ready for step 4 in our masking course. I'm still calling it masking basics, but we're going to go a step beyond the basics today because what we're going to do is instead of working with a single photo inside Photoshop, we're actually going to work with 3 different images that are brackets of various exposures for a scene. And we're going to manually blend them into one really nice outcome. All of this is going to start in Lightroom, and you'll see I've already selected the 3 images I want to work with. And when I go to get these into Photoshop as layers, I'm just going to click on one of them. If they are all selected, it should work. I'm going to go to Edit In, and I'm not going to go to Edit in Adobe Photoshop. I'm going to go down to the bottom, and I'm going to go to Open as Layers in Photoshop. Sometimes it takes it a couple of minutes to think and open up all 3, so I have already done that for us. And if we open up our layer palette, you'll see all 3 of these images have just been opened up as layers. They've got the file name as the layer name by default. As I go and turn these off, you're going to see that it's bouncing around a little bit. And we don't want that. We want to make sure that this is perfectly aligned before we work with it. And the easiest way to do that is to select these layers, go to the Edit menu, and choose Auto Align Layers. And we're going to leave it on auto. If you were trying to do a panorama or stitch multiple images together, these others might work, but go to auto. I'm going to hit OK, and it's going to think just a couple of minutes. It's got to detect all of that information and find the best way to stack it together. Now, if we go back to the top one and turn it off, I don't see those jumps anymore. They all just appear to be differences in clouds. The best way to check and make sure it got it just perfect is to come up, select your top layer, go to the opacity, and you want to reduce the opacity and look for any kind of haloing, and the best thing you can do for that is to look like at this front ridge line or the ridge line through the middle of the horizon. So if we come and I take that and I start dragging it down, you'll see that no halos are appearing, so it looks like that was a pretty good job. I'm going to hide that top layer, do the same thing on my middle layer, and see if I get any halos here. And I'm also not seeing halos here, so I think that Photoshop has done a splendid job for us, and we're going to leave it at that. You will notice that I've got a lot of kind of crap area around the borders now because I was hand holding when I shot these exposures. It was a quick, hey, pull over the side of the road so we can shoot that moment. So we didn't drag out the tripod for that, and the quickest way to deal with that is just to go ahead and crop it. If we want to stick to your original ratio, you can kind of do that. Then you can just move it in a little bit from each corner until that pesky, like transparent dotted area disappears. And so you'll see there's still a little overlap here. So down just a little more. There we go. I don't think we've lost anything critical around the edges. In fact, later on I might actually come in and change it so that this road comes in from the corner. That might be kind of cool. But for now, let me go ahead and leave the crop as it is, nice and clean. And now we're ready to begin the real work. These file names are great, but they're not going to tell me exactly what I'm working with throughout the process, so I want to rename them based on how I want to use them. And so let's just take a minute to look at these. Here we have what is obviously the lightest exposure. And what I like most about this image is how much clarity you have in the foreground in this hillside and how well you can see the greens and the little bits of trees. And so I want my final image to have those qualities. If we look, you know, it's all darkened out in the middle exposure, and in that top exposure there's a little bit there, but it doesn't have that kind of inviting bright pop that makes you kind of want to go and perch out there and watch the sun. So this is going to be the hillside. Now, this next layer, it's kind of obvious what's cool here. What I love here is just the power of the skies and the clouds there. So I'm going to call this one Clouds, because you know this murky stuff, we're going to lose that. And then this middle layer, I think is really going to be our base. I think that's where we want to take the center of this from. So I'm just going to call this Base. It's the middle exposure, and I'm going to go ahead and take it and drag it down to the bottom just to make it a little easier, so everything else is going to sit on top of it. Now, to work with these, we can work from the top to the bottom to the top. We're going to start with the hillside. I think that's going to be the easiest, and so what I want to do is create a mask that lets this beautiful hillside come through, but hides all of the washed out, non-detailed area behind it. So to do that, let me get rid of that crop. It makes me nervous. I'm going to come here and I'm going to add a mask to it. So just click that mask button and you'll see we've gotten a plain white mask, right? And white reveals. So right now we can see everything that's a part of that image. But we only want to see this stuff in the foreground. A quick way to do that is to get our quick select tool. So I just hit W to pull that up, or you can come here to this menu item, if it'll click, and you'll see it pop out there. Yeah, so quick selection. And I'm going to come and just drag it over the area that I want to select. Beautiful, isn't it? I think there's just a little bit more down there. There we go. 2 clicks and we have a great selection. I love the quick selection tool. And now you'll see my foreground color in the paint is black, the background's white, but we've already got a white mask. So the easiest thing to do is just going to be hit Option and delete, fill that entire selection in with black. Now we've got the exact reverse of what I want, right? So I'm going to deselect that area, I'm going to double click on the mask to pull up those mask properties, and you'll see down here you have an option to invert it. And the minute I invert it, suddenly, in fact we'll do it again so you can watch, the dark murky stuff that we didn't like becomes the bright hillside, and all that washed out stuff becomes what we have in the base layer right below it. Looking at that, I'm pretty happy with it, but I think that we're getting a little bit of a halo down here at the edge. And there's a couple of different ways you can do that and fix it. One way is we could turn on some edge detection and have it figure out where the edge would be for that, and you can see as I pull that up, the halo is actually getting a lot better. And then we can also come in and add a little bit of feathering, and usually I feather about 3 pixels, but we also want to just watch along those trees to make sure we don't get a halo. And as we come way up here, you'd see how it gets really glowy. So just barely. And I think we want to bring the edge in just a touch because there's still a little bit there, and I need some feathering for the transition. So I'm going to leave the feather at about 3 because I love 3. It's my sweet spot. And I'm going to come down here to Shift Edge. I'm going to pull it back to the left, and you'll see as it pulls in how that halo that was right around this lower area just comes down. So you'll see here it is, where we start, and as we pull down, shift it in just a little bit, not too much. And now we've got a nice smooth transition from the hillside to the mid-ground. And I'm just going to hit OK. Now, woohoo, we're well on our way. But the next step is going to be to bring out these awesome clouds. Now, dark exposures can be really tricky to work with because you can see it's a pretty drastic change from the sky to the hillside. But rather than stress too much about that right now, I'm going to go ahead and just make a basic mask to get the sky in, and then we'll work on making it a little better as we go. So again, I'm going to hit the button to add the layer mask, and I've still got my quick wand selected. And I think the easiest way to do this is to actually select from the hillside down. I could try selecting the clouds, but you got a lot of contrast in those, and you have less contrast in this exposure here in the hillside. So as we go across it, you'll see I'm going up to the lightest areas, and then I'm going to keep coming on down here. That looks pretty good to me, and this is the case where that's the area we want to hide. Black is already selected, so it'll conceal that. It's Option and Delete to fill in with your foreground color. Now you can see that's a big jump. We're not going to want that jump. And so the next thing I'm going to do is actually work to lighten this up a little bit. We could do it a couple of different ways. We could come in here and we could try just using a layer mask, but then we're losing the drama of the clouds, right? We need a little bit more than just what the blending mode does. So we're going to leave this in normal mode, and I'm actually just going to take my opacity down to where I'm happy with it. I think we're getting in the land where it might be possible to leave it about there, but we haven't done any feathering yet. We haven't changed up our edge, so I'm also going to come in here and I'm going to add feather to that. And I am also going to shift the edge just a little bit. And I think in this case I actually need to shift it a little bit the other direction. So does that work better or worse? Nope. Because it works on the left side but not the right. So maybe we'll leave Shift Edge. Anytime you change your mind, just double click the header here and it moves it right back to 0. Do we want to work with this? Nope. I think we're just going to have to stay with our, you know, 3. No, 3 is too much. Just come down just a little bit with a little bit of our feathering there, and let's hit OK. Let's see how this is looking now. What we need to do is soften it a little more. I think 65% is still going to be a little too much for us, so we're going to bring it on down. And now, as we get here in the 40s, you can see we still have a lot more detail in the clouds than we do in the base layer, but we've still got that edge. So one way to fix that is we can come back. We are still clicked on our mask area, and what we want to do is get our normal brush. So I hit B to pull up the brush. I want to come out here, I want to get a nice soft fuzzy brush, and I want to hit the flow. Instead of having it at 100%, I'm going to put the flow down. Let's start with it at 50, and let's just see what happens when I come out here. And in fact, I want a bigger brush than that, so I'm going to use the brackets to get it the size I want. I'm just going to come right along the edge with that, and you can see how that's doing a little bit just to clean it up. You can probably couldn't tell it was adding that to the mask as we went, but with flow, what it means is that it was kind of more subtle. Instead of getting it at 100% strength, we've only got it at 50% strength. So that's taking it down even further than the opacity did, but only where we brushed it in. Now, we look at all 3 of these, we have stacked up our image. So we have dramatic sky, a nice hillside foreground, and this clean base in the center. You might come back, like I'm always torn. I kind of actually like the brighter rays a little bit here in the top layer, so I could come back with my white and come in and just paint the streaks down in this area so you can see them. But oops, you see what's happened there? You see how those streaks are on the photo? That's one of the dangers. I didn't check to make sure I had clicked over on clouds. So let's go back up to opacity change. Now we'll click on clouds. I'm going to come in and we'll paint them that way. So it didn't really matter that I was painting right on the image because it was in the part of the image that was hidden, so nobody saw it. And as I've done this, I've probably put a little too much stuff back here, so you know, in that white area. So I'm going to make my brush a little smaller again. I'm going to switch back to black because it's how easy it is to undo it. Switch back to black and just put a little bit more. And so we're going to have to go over this a few times until I get it right where I want it to be. But I think I can be happy with that. There's a little bit of a glow there. And if we want to fix the glow, we're going to go in, we're going to zoom in there, and we're really going to have to work with our opacity. So I've got a little too much of the bottom layer showing through. So I want to paint in some black. I want this to be small though. I probably actually want to take that flow down even more. And now, as we go over it, there's no big stark glow. It just almost looks like there's a little bit of sun back there. Maybe we'll put it here too. And I think I'm happy with this now. I could go back and forth with this area all day long until I'm happy with it, but I think I'm nitpicking now, and that we're in an area that's pretty nice. So if we want to review what we've done, here's our base layer in the middle. Here it is with a nice pop of foreground and with a nice hit of dramatic background. Now the last thing we need to do before we go back to Lightroom with this is we actually want this to be a single image. And so we'll hold Shift, we'll select them all. Or you don't even have to do that. We could be on any one of these since they all have the eyeball turned on. But to create them into a merged layer, you could go here to your drop down and select merge layers, but it's much easier to go Shift, Option, Command, E. It's kind of like making a claw with your fingers. So now you'll see we have one image, and this means if we want to, we can take it into other programs and edit with it even further. If you're really done with these, you don't think you'll come back to them, it's okay to go ahead and delete those, because remember, they're eating up all kinds of extra memory. Your file size goes down a lot. So if you know you're done with it, delete them. If you think you might come back to them, leave them the way they are. But that's it. That's how you blend 3 different exposures into a single image.